Jacinta, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Look, it's really wonderful to be back here in Dubbo. It's been great to be on the road again, stopping off in Lithgow, Bathurst, Orange, and now here, of course. And, David's right. Cost of living is a huge issue. Obviously, I've been on the road. We've been discussing the voice and engaging with people on the ground. And the general feeling is that Australians just want to get on with things, whether we're from, Indigenous background or non-Indigenous background in this country. I mean, we're standing here at a wonderful, business that is about empowering all community members of all backgrounds, and that is the general feeling. There was a young woman in Lithgow yesterday, Indigenous woman, who thanked me for being there, thanked us for being there, thanked us for putting up the fight to maintain an Australia that is united. And she's worked in the child protection space and spaces with social services. And as far as she's concerned, it's dividing this country is not a great idea. And while the Prime Minister is so focused on this referendum, nothing else is getting done. And, let's not forget, cost of living also affects Indigenous Australians, particularly our most marginalised Indigenous Australians, and everyone's feeling that right now, feeling the pinch of cost of living. We've got about 18 days left to go before the referendum, and then we can get back to actually addressing our real issues as a country together without dividing us along the lines of race within our country. But look, the general feel is that Australians want to get on with it, regardless of their background, together as a community, not divided along the lines of race. There are solutions within communities. We know here at Ready E that they have solutions where they encompass the entire community to make sure everyone's moving forward together. Thank you.
Jacinta, thank you. Well, firstly, thank you very much to Mark Colton for putting on such a great visit. I've been in Moree and Dubbo, and we've spoken to a lot of people, particularly Australians who are doing it tough at the moment. And as David and Jacinta have been on the road as well, they're hearing the same message. Petrol at the moment, went past a petrol station this morning, $2.34 a litre for diesel. And it comes on top of people paying more for their electricity bills under this government. There's no sign anywhere in regional Australia of people getting a $275 reduction in their power prices, which the Prime Minister had promised them at the last election. There's no sign of a reduction in gas going down. People are paying much more now than from the time that Mr Albanese was elected Prime Minister. People are paying more for their insurance premiums. People are getting less for their money when they pay at the checkout at Coles or Woolies or the IGA. I think it's a really worrying time for Australians, and I think the Prime Minister needs to start listening to Australians who need his help now more than ever. And not just families, but small businesses as well. Some of those small business families are facing exactly the same pressures in terms of all of their input costs. And many of them that we've spoken to as you go around have trimmed back everywhere they can. But if business continues to downturn under this government, they'll start putting people off, and unemployment will go up, and that's exactly what the government's predicted in their budget. Don't forget that Mr Albanese's had two budgets now to make it easier, not harder for Australians, and instead they've made economic decisions and decisions outside of the budget cycle that have resulted in inflation being higher, and that means interest rates remaining higher. It means your mortgage staying higher for longer, and there are a lot of worrying signs in the economy at the moment. At the same time, you're getting a government talking about this ideological attack in relation to industrial relations, which is all about pleasing the union movement and nothing to do with trying to make it easier to keep staff on and make it easier for employers to employ people. So if we see a downturn in the economy, at exactly the same time the government's throwing a wet blanket over it with industrial relations changes, we're going to see further increases in cost of living. And Australian families are going to pick up that tab that Labor's creating, and that is something the Prime Minister should concentrate on, because, as David rightly points out, the Prime Minister has spent the first 16 months of his term completely and utterly focused on the voice, and he's forgotten about Australians in the regions and in rural, remote areas, in cities, in towns. This is a Prime Minister who I think is completely out of touch with the Australian public. I'm happy to take any questions.
How can we fix issues in Dubbo, such as the crime problem, without a voice?
Well, a couple of points. You've got a lot of engagement from businesses like this who are providing jobs. I want to say thank you very much to Peter and to the team here, inspirational people, and they're actually providing real outcomes. Any youth crime in particular is something that communities need to take very seriously, and we're seeing pockets around the country now, not just in Dubbo, but in places like Townsville, in Rockhampton, in WA, right across the country, where we have communities that in some cases people are leaving their keys on the coffee table by the front door in case they get broken into. They don't want kids coming, or people who have broken into the houses coming into their bedrooms. I mean, how have we got to that position? Nothing to do with the voice. Let's be very clear about it. It's to do with a breakdown in law and order. It's to do with the appointment of magistrates by Labor premiers who are civil libertarians who don't impose proper penalties or provide deterrence to young people in that situation. But we need to make sure that there are employment programs available so that young people in particular, are engaged. We need to make sure that the schooling system is working effectively and keeping kids in school and off the streets. And we need to make sure that if they do steal a car or there is willful damage, that there's a penalty to pay for that. And if not, why not go and steal a car the next night if you know you're just going to get a slap on the wrist from the court? So there are many issues to it, and it's a complex problem, and it plays out differently around the country, but they are some of the most significant aspects to the problem of youth crime in particular.
Is it something that the parents should be held responsible, or the carers should be held responsible for?
Well, there's no doubt that parental responsibility is key here. If your kids are running around of a night time, then they are going to get into trouble. And as Jacinta and I saw in Alice Springs, you've got a situation there where kids are living in very difficult circumstances. There's a lot more that we should be doing as a community to support that, but a Canberra-based voice is not going to provide support to those families or to those kids to see them diverted into employment programs or see them diverted into training programs.